welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the recent elections in Nigeria in 2007 and the implications for the continent of Africa. And of course, we have with us to talk about the recent elections in Nigeria in 2007, Dr. LMadu1. Dr. LMadu1 is well known to many of our members of our audience, primarily because he's been with us on a number of occasions, each time talking about some of the important developments on the continent of Africa. And of course, Dr. LMadu1, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
And to tell you, Dr. LMadu1, how delighted we are to have you with us once again, because we're talking about what I consider to be one of the most important developments on the continent of Africa over the last many years, and that is what has happened in Nigeria over the last many weeks. And so let's have you to start off by talking to us about the state of Nigeria and some of the other situations that you think our audience ought to be familiar with this morning.
Well, like you rightly pointed out, the elections this year were very momentous. They were momentous insofar as a civilian-to-civilian transfer of power is concerned. This is the first time in the history of the country that a civilian will be handing over to another civilian. Previously, it has been military back to civilian, and civilian government has been overthrown by the army. However, the first elections in the country, really, that ushered in a democratic government was held in 1959. That was the election that ushered in a parliamentary system of government modeled on the British system. That government lasted for 6 years before it was overthrown by the military in 1966. The military held on to power until 1979, when it handed over power again to a civilian government. That civilian government was overthrown in 1983, and the army held on power till 1993, when it held under elections. But the elections were cancelled. The military did not accept the elections because of the person who won the election. And since then, you know, in 1998, you know, the army decided to hand over power again after Abacha's death and also that of Moshood Abiola. An election was held in which former Army General Obasanjo was elected as president of the country. He ran again in 2003 and was re-elected again. And this is the last, you know, elections. And he's supposed to be handing over power to an elected government on the 29th of this month.
Very good. And so you've had a succession of military governments and then a civilian government and military government, and now you've got the passage of from one civilian government to another civilian government. Now, there should be a question in reference to how that election has been received in reference to that, and I'm sure you're going to tell us in reference to that.
Well, majority of the international observers who witnessed the elections came out with a report that the elections were flawed, a lot of intimidation of opponents by the ruling People's Democratic Party of Nigeria. Election boxes being stuffed before even, you know, the electorate got there. Shortage of election boxes, you know, etc., etc. Majority of Nigerians feel the same way, that the elections were rigged, that they were not transparent. However, while most people in the country are upset about the elections, the consolation is that somebody, you know, eventually a civilian will be handing over to a civilian, which is very significant, in that, you know, that would make Nigerians get accustomed to having
transfer power taken.
Precisely, transferring power from one civilian to the other, and also establishing the civilian supremacy over the military. You know, the military has to get used to saluting a civilian commander-in-chief. All these are very significant, you know. So in that regard, it was very momentous. However, you know, as much as people are upset, you know, about the outcome of the elections, I think they should give an opportunity to the current incoming president, Yar'Adua, you know, to see what he can do. He might not be the best candidate, but at least in 4 years, there'll be under elections, and his opponents will have time, the chance to defeat him in our elections, if possible.
Very good. And of course, Dr. LMadu, we're getting ready for our first commercial break, and I think that what you've done, you've laid out a very, very good foundation in terms of democracy, how it is evolving in Nigeria. But now, when we come back, we want you to talk about the implications that this has for other areas throughout Africa. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.